Picture this. You're standing on the deck of a research vessel, the ocean stretching endlessly in every direction, when suddenly your sonar equipment starts going absolutely crazy. The readings don't make sense. Massive geometric structures are scattered across the seafloor, structures that shouldn't exist. Buildings, roads, what appears to be an entire city lying silent beneath 3 miles of water. This isn't science fiction. This is happening right now in oceans around the world. And what we're discovering is forcing us to rewrite everything we thought we knew about human history. Welcome to a mystery that's been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into one of the most mind-bending questions our species has ever faced. What if everything we've been taught about the rise of civilization is wrong? What if long before the last ice age ended, there was an empire so advanced, so sophisticated, that it makes our modern world look primitive by comparison? Now, before you click away thinking this is just another conspiracy theory, I need you to understand something. The evidence I'm about to show you isn't coming from fringe researchers or basement bloggers. It's coming from respected marine archaeologists, geologists, and oceanographers using cutting-edge technology. And what they're finding is absolutely staggering. You see, for the past century, we've been operating under a very specific assumption about human history. We've been told that civilization began around 6,000 years ago with the Sumerians, that before that, our ancestors were nothing more than primitive hunter-gatherers scraping by in small tribes. But here's the thing that's been keeping me up at night. What if we've been looking in all the wrong places? Think about it. During the last ice age, which ended roughly 12,000 years ago, sea levels were 400 feet lower than they are today. 400 feet. That means vast stretches of what is now ocean floor were dry land. Fertile coastal plains where millions of people could have lived, built cities, developed technologies we can't even imagine. And when the ice melted? When those massive glaciers turned to water and came rushing back to reclaim the land? Every single trace of that civilization would have been swallowed by the waves, lost beneath miles of dark water, waiting for us to develop the technology to find them again. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me start with something that happened just 3 years ago, something that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community and changed everything. Dr. Sarah Chen was leading a routine mapping expedition off the coast of Japan when her team's equipment detected something impossible. The sonar was picking up what appeared to be a perfectly rectangular structure on the ocean floor, nearly 2 miles down. At first, they thought it was a malfunction. Equipment breaks down all the time in the deep ocean. But when they sent down their remotely operated vehicle, what they saw through that camera feed made everyone on that ship go completely silent. It was a building. Not a natural rock formation, not a coral reef, but an actual building with right angles, straight walls, and what appeared to be windows. The structure was massive, easily the size of a city block, and it was clearly artificial. But here's the kicker. Based on the sediment layers around it, this building had been underwater for at least 10,000 years. 10,000 years! That's twice as old as the pyramids of Egypt, twice as old as Stonehenge. This single discovery meant that someone, somewhere, had been building sophisticated structures when we thought humans were still figuring out agriculture. But Dr. Chen's discovery was just the beginning. Because when word got out about what they'd found, research teams around the world started looking at their own sonar data with fresh eyes. And what they discovered was mind-blowing. Off the coast of India, researchers found what appears to be an entire city, complete with roads, buildings, and what looks like a harbour. The structures show clear signs of planning and engineering, with drainage systems and organised street layouts that would make modern urban planners jealous. Near the Bahamas, divers have been exploring what they call the Bimini Road, a formation of massive stone blocks arranged in perfectly straight lines beneath the waves. The blocks are cut with precision, fitted together without mortar, and stretch for over half a mile across the ocean floor. And perhaps most incredible of all, off the coast of Cuba, researchers using advanced sonar have detected what appears to be a massive complex of pyramids and buildings sitting on the ocean floor at a depth of over 2,000 feet. The structures are enormous, some of them taller than modern skyscrapers, arranged in a pattern that suggests careful urban planning. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this sounds too incredible to be true. How could an advanced civilization have existed that long ago without leaving any trace on land? How could something this significant have been hidden from us for so long? Well, here's where things get really interesting, because it turns out we have been finding traces, We've just been misinterpreting them for decades. Take the megalithic structures scattered around the world, Stonehenge in England, the temples of Malta, the mysterious ruins at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. These sites have always puzzled archaeologists because they seem to appear out of nowhere, with no clear developmental progression leading up to them. It's as if the people who built them already knew exactly what they were doing, as if they were working from a blueprint that came from somewhere else. Göbekli Tepe is particularly fascinating because it's over 11,000 years old, making it older than agriculture itself. The site features massive stone pillars arranged in perfect circles, carved with intricate designs that would challenge modern sculptors. The level of organisation and skill required to create something like this should have been impossible for hunter-gatherer societies. Unless, of course, they weren't starting from scratch. What if these land-based monuments weren't the beginning of human civilization, but rather the remnants? What if they were built by survivors of a much older culture, people who were trying to preserve and recreate the knowledge and techniques of their ancestors who had lived in those drowned coastal cities? This would explain so many of the mysteries that have been bothering archaeologists for generations. It would explain why ancient cultures around the world share so many similar myths about great floods and lost civilizations. It would explain why we see such sophisticated astronomical knowledge in ancient societies that supposedly had no way to develop it. And it would explain why certain technologies and architectural techniques seem to appear fully formed, without the trial and error process we'd expect to see. But let's talk about the flood myths for a moment, because this is where things get really compelling. Every major culture on Earth has stories about a great deluge that destroyed an earlier civilization. The Bible talks about Noah's flood. The ancient Mesopotamians had the Epic of Gilgamesh. Hindu texts describe multiple cycles of destruction and rebirth. Native American tribes across North and South America have detailed oral histories of a time when the waters rose and swallowed the world. For a long time, scholars dismissed these as purely mythological symbolic stories about the human condition. But what if they're not myths at all? What if they're cultural memories, passed down through generations, of a real catastrophic event that our ancestors witnessed firsthand? The science is starting to support this possibility. Geologists now know that the end of the last ice age wasn't a gradual process. It happened in rapid bursts, with massive ice dams breaking and releasing continent-sized lakes worth of water into the oceans almost overnight. These events, called glacial lake outburst floods, would have been absolutely catastrophic for any coastal civilizations. Imagine living in a thriving city by the ocean, going about your daily life, when suddenly the sea level rises by dozens of feet in a matter of days or weeks. Everything you've ever known, every building, every road, every monument disappears beneath the waves. The only survivors would be those who managed to reach higher ground, and they would spend the rest of their lives telling their children and grandchildren about the incredible world that once existed beneath the sea. This brings us to one of the most intriguing pieces of evidence, the Piraeus map. This is a genuine historical document, created by an Ottoman admiral in 1513, that shows the coastline of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy. But here's the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and the coastline shown on the map depicts the continent as it would appear without its ice sheet. How could a 16th century mapmaker have knowledge of what Antarctica looks like under its ice? The only explanation that makes sense is that this map was based on much older sources that date back to a time when Antarctica was ice-free and possibly inhabited. And this raises an even more staggering possibility. What if the pre-glacial empire we're talking about wasn't limited to one continent or one ocean? What if it was truly global, with trade routes and communication networks that spanned the entire planet? The evidence for this is starting to mount. Researchers have found similar architectural styles and construction techniques in megalithic sites around the world, despite these locations being separated by thousands of miles of ocean. They've discovered identical symbols and artistic motifs carved into stone monuments on different continents. And perhaps most compelling of all, they've found evidence of ancient maritime technology that was far more advanced than we ever imagined. Recent discoveries have revealed that ancient peoples were capable of ocean voyages we thought impossible. They were navigating by the stars with precision that rivals modern GPS systems. They were building ships capable of carrying massive stone blocks across thousands of miles of open water. And they were doing all of this thousands of years before we thought such technology existed. But if this global civilization was so advanced, if they had technology that could move massive stones and navigate the oceans with precision, What else might they have been capable of? What other technologies might they have developed that we're only now beginning to rediscover? This is where things get really mind-bending, because some researchers are starting to find evidence of technologies that shouldn't have existed in the ancient world. Precision metalworking that requires knowledge of advanced chemistry, architectural techniques that seem to defy the laws of physics, astronomical observations that would have required instruments we didn't think existed until the modern era. And here's the thing that really gets me. We're still finding this stuff. Every year, marine archaeologists are discovering new underwater sites that push back the timeline of human civilization. Every year, we're uncovering evidence of technologies and capabilities that our ancestors supposedly didn't possess. The implications of all this are staggering. If there really was a pre-glacial empire, if human civilization is thousands of years older than we thought, then everything we believe about our past, our capabilities, and our potential future needs to be reconsidered. Think about what this means for our understanding of human nature itself. We've been told that we're the most advanced civilization that has ever existed, that we're at the pinnacle of human achievement. But what if we're not? What if we're actually just now starting to rediscover technologies and capabilities that our ancestors mastered thousands of years ago? And if that's true, then what else might be waiting for us beneath the waves? What other secrets might be hidden in those drowned cities, waiting for us to develop the technology to explore them properly? The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet's surface, and we've explored less than 5% of it. That means there are millions of square miles of ocean floor that we've never seen, never mapped, never investigated. And based on what we're finding in the small areas we have explored, it's becoming clear that we're sitting on top of the greatest archaeological treasure trove in human history. But here's where the story takes an even more incredible turn. Because the evidence we're uncovering suggests that this wasn't just a civilization that got unlucky with a flood. This was a civilization that saw it coming. Dr. Michael Rodriguez was analysing core samples from the Mediterranean seafloor when he made a discovery that changed his entire perspective on ancient history. Deep within layers of sediment that dated back 12,000 years, he found something that shouldn't have been there: microscopic fragments of worked metal, perfectly preserved in the ocean mud. But these weren't just random bits of bronze or iron. When Rodriguez's team analysed the composition using mass spectrometry, they found alloys that required sophisticated metallurgical knowledge to create. We're talking about metal combinations that involve precise temperature control and chemical processes that we didn't think existed until the Industrial Revolution. The implications hit Rodriguez like a lightning bolt. Someone, thousands of years before the supposed dawn of civilization, was creating advanced materials using techniques that required not just knowledge, but infrastructure. You don't accidentally create these kinds of alloys in a primitive forge. You need organized production, standardized processes, and a deep understanding of chemistry. But that was just the beginning of what Rodriguez found in those core samples. Mixed in with the metal fragments were microscopic glass beads, perfectly spherical and uniform in size. The only way to create glass like this is through controlled manufacturing processes involving precise temperature regulation and rapid cooling techniques. And then there were the ceramic fragments. Not crude pottery, but advanced ceramics with properties that modern engineers would recognize. Heat-resistant materials that could withstand extreme temperatures, composite materials that combined different elements for specific purposes. Rodriguez stared at his findings for weeks, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. This wasn't the debris of a simple coastal village that got swept away by rising waters. This was evidence of an industrial civilization, one that had mastered materials science at a level that we're only now beginning to understand. But perhaps the most shocking discovery came when Rodriguez's team found something else embedded in those ancient sediment layers: synthetic compounds that don't occur in nature, polymers, plastics, materials that require petroleum-based chemistry and industrial production facilities. Now I want you to really think about what this means. We're finding evidence of synthetic materials in ocean sediments that are over 10,000 years old. Materials that require not just advanced chemistry, but massive infrastructure to produce. Oil refineries, chemical plants, distribution networks. And here's the thing that's been haunting researchers like Rodriguez. If this civilization had that level of technological sophistication, what happened to it? How does something that advanced just disappear without a trace? The answer might lie in the geological evidence that's been accumulating over the past decade. Because it turns out that the end of the last ice age wasn't just about rising sea levels. It was about something much more catastrophic. Dr. Lisa Park, a geologist at Stanford, has been studying ice core data from Greenland and Antarctica, and what she's found suggests that our planet went through a period of extreme climate instability around 12,000 years ago. We're not talking about gradual warming. We're talking about rapid, violent changes that would have been absolutely devastating to any advanced civilization. The ice cores show evidence of massive volcanic eruptions that darkened the skies for years at a time. They show temperature fluctuations that would have disrupted agriculture and weather patterns across the globe. And they show chemical signatures that suggest asteroid or comet impacts that would have triggered tsunamis and earthquakes on a scale we can barely imagine. Park's research suggests that our planet went through what she calls a perfect storm of catastrophic events during a relatively short period of time. Any civilization, no matter how advanced, would have struggled to survive that kind of global devastation. But here's where the story gets even more intriguing. Because some researchers are starting to find evidence that this ancient civilization didn't just disappear. They planned for it. Dr. James Mitchell, an underwater archaeologist working off the coast of Peru, has been exploring a site that defies everything we thought we knew about ancient capabilities. At a depth of nearly 3,000 feet, his team has discovered what appears to be a massive vault complex built into the ocean floor itself. The structure is enormous, carved directly into the bedrock with precision that would challenge modern engineers. The walls are lined with what appears to be a synthetic material that has prevented water infiltration for thousands of years. And inside these chambers, Mitchell's team has found something absolutely extraordinary. Sealed containers, hundreds of them, arranged in careful rows throughout the complex. The containers themselves are made from materials that Mitchell's team is still trying to identify, but they appear to be completely impervious to water, pressure, and time. When Mitchell's team managed to open one of these containers using robotic equipment, what they found inside changed everything they thought they knew about this lost civilization. Technical diagrams, mathematical equations, star charts showing celestial alignments that won't occur again for thousands of years. But it wasn't just scientific knowledge. There were detailed maps showing the locations of other similar vault complexes around the world, coordinates that led Mitchell's team to corresponding sites off the coasts of Africa, Australia, and the Mediterranean. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just one isolated storage facility. This was part of a global network, a deliberate attempt to preserve knowledge and technology for future generations. The diagrams that Mitchell found were particularly fascinating because they showed technological concepts that were only now beginning to develop. Energy generation systems that harness natural forces in ways our modern science is just starting to understand. Transportation methods that seem to defy conventional physics. Communication technologies that could transmit information across vast distances without any visible infrastructure. But perhaps most incredible of all were the biological diagrams. Detailed representations of genetic structures and cellular processes that suggest a deep understanding of life itself. These weren't crude anatomical drawings. These were sophisticated scientific illustrations that showed knowledge of DNA, cellular division, and biological engineering that shouldn't have existed until the 20th century. Mitchell realized he wasn't just looking at the remnants of an ancient civilization. He was looking at evidence of a civilization that was far more advanced than our own. And that's when the really mind-blowing discoveries started coming to light. Because as more research teams began investigating the coordinates found in Mitchell's vault, they started uncovering evidence of technologies that challenge our basic understanding of physics. Off the coast of Egypt, researchers found structures that appear to generate their own energy using principles we don't fully understand. The buildings seem to be designed to harness electromagnetic fields in ways that create sustainable power without any visible fuel source or moving parts. Near the Azores, underwater exploration teams discovered what appears to be a transportation network, with perfectly straight tunnels carved through the ocean floor that stretch for hundreds of miles. The tunnels are lined with the same synthetic materials found in Mitchell's vaults, and they show signs of having been used for high-speed travel using technologies that we can't identify. And perhaps most mysteriously, in multiple locations around the world, researchers have found structures that appear to be designed for communication across vast distances. These facilities contain crystalline formations that seem to amplify and transmit electromagnetic signals with incredible precision. The more we discover about this lost civilization, the more it becomes clear that they weren't just advanced. They were operating on principles that we're only now beginning to glimpse. They had mastered technologies that we consider cutting edge, and they had developed capabilities that we're still trying to achieve. But here's what really keeps me up at night. If this civilization was so advanced, if they had technologies that surpass our own, then why did they disappear? What could have been so catastrophic that it wiped out a global empire with capabilities beyond our current understanding? The answer might be more terrifying than we want to admit, because the geological evidence suggests that our planet goes through cycles of catastrophic change that are far more regular than we'd like to believe. Ice ages, magnetic pole reversals, asteroid impacts, massive volcanic eruptions. Events that occur on timescales that make them invisible to human civilization, but that are absolutely devastating when they happen. And if that's true, then this lost empire might not be unique. It might just be the most recent in a long series of advanced civilizations that have risen and fallen throughout Earth's history. Civilizations that reached incredible heights of technological achievement, only to be wiped out by forces beyond their control. The evidence is starting to suggest that human civilization might be cyclical, that we rise and fall in patterns that span tens of thousands of years. And if that's true, then we might not be the first civilization to reach our current level of technology. We might just be the latest in a long line of species trying to unlock the secrets of the universe before the next catastrophic reset occurs. This possibility raises questions that go to the very heart of who we are as a species. Are we truly the pinnacle of human achievement, or are we just rediscovering technologies and capabilities that our ancestors mastered long ago? Are the scientific breakthroughs we're so proud of actually just small steps toward reclaiming knowledge that was once common understanding? And if this lost civilization was preparing for catastrophe, if they built those vault networks to preserve their knowledge for future generations, then what else might they have left for us to find? The implications of these discoveries are staggering when you really stop to think about them. We're not just talking about finding some old pottery or primitive tools scattered on the ocean floor. We're talking about evidence of a civilization that had mastered technologies we're still struggling to understand, and they did it over 10,000 years ago. But here's where this story takes a turn that's going to challenge everything you think you know about human potential. Because the more researchers dig into these underwater sites, the more they're realizing that this ancient empire didn't just have advanced technology, they had something we've completely lost, a fundamental understanding of how to work with natural forces instead of against them. Dr. Elena Vasquez was part of the team exploring those Egyptian energy-generating structures I mentioned earlier. When she first saw the sonar readings, she thought they were looking at some kind of natural geological formation. The structures were perfectly integrated into the seafloor, as if they had grown there rather than been built. But when Vasquez's team sent down their deep-sea vehicles for a closer look, what they found was mind-blowing. These weren't buildings in any sense that we would recognize. They were more like living machines, structures that seemed to pulse and flow with the natural rhythms of the ocean itself. The walls weren't made from stone or metal, but from some kind of biosynthetic material that appeared to be self-repairing. When small sections were damaged by their exploration equipment, the structures actually healed themselves, flowing back into their original configuration like some kind of intelligent liquid. But even more incredible was how these structures generated power. Vasquez's team detected massive electromagnetic fields emanating from the buildings, but there were no visible power sources, no generators, no fuel, no moving parts. The structures seemed to be drawing energy directly from the Earth's magnetic field and the movement of the ocean currents. When Vasquez ran the calculations, she realized these buildings were producing more energy than most modern power plants, and they had been doing it continuously for thousands of years without any maintenance or fuel input. It was as if whoever built them had figured out how to tap into the fundamental forces of the planet itself. But that was just the beginning of what Vasquez discovered, because these energy structures weren't isolated. They were part of a network that spanned the entire Mediterranean sea floor, connected by those mysterious tunnels I mentioned earlier. When Vasquez's team traced the tunnel system using advanced sonar mapping, they found something that made absolutely no sense. The tunnels formed a perfect geometric pattern across the ocean floor, with distances and angles that seemed to follow mathematical principles we're only now beginning to understand. And here's the really crazy part. When they mapped out the entire network, the pattern matched celestial alignments that wouldn't occur again for another 26,000 years. Whoever built this system wasn't just thinking ahead for a few generations. They were planning for cosmic cycles that span geological ages. This level of long-term thinking is something we've completely lost in our modern world. We plan for quarters, maybe decades if we're being really ambitious. But this ancient civilization was thinking in terms of planetary cycles, cosmic alignments, and geological epochs. Dr. Robert Kim, who's been studying the biological diagrams found in those vault complexes, thinks he knows why. Kim has a background in both archaeology and genetic engineering, and when he saw those ancient DNA charts, he immediately recognized something that shouldn't have been possible. The diagrams weren't just showing genetic structures, they were showing genetic modifications, planned evolutionary changes that would allow organisms to adapt to specific environmental conditions. These people weren't just observing life, they were actively designing it. Kim's analysis suggests that this civilization had developed what he calls evolutionary engineering. They could modify organisms at the genetic level to survive catastrophic environmental changes. Essentially, they were preparing life itself to survive whatever cosmic or geological disasters might come. But here's where Kim's research gets really unsettling. Because some of those genetic modifications described in the ancient diagrams match patterns that we're finding in modern human DNA. Specific sequences that seem to have no current function, but that could be activated under certain environmental conditions. Kim's preliminary research suggests that we might be carrying dormant genetic modifications installed by this ancient civilization. Biological programs designed to activate during times of global catastrophe, giving us enhanced abilities to survive and rebuild. If Kim is right, then we're not just the descendants of survivors of this lost empire. We're their insurance policy. We're living, breathing backup drives containing the genetic potential to recreate their civilization when the time is right. This possibility is being supported by discoveries that are happening right now, all around the world. Research teams are finding evidence that this ancient empire didn't just disappear, they scattered. They went underground, literally and figuratively, preserving their knowledge and capabilities in hidden locations around the globe. Dr. Amanda Foster has been investigating anomalous structures found in cave systems throughout South America. These aren't natural caverns, but carefully carved underground complexes that show the same advanced engineering techniques found in the underwater sites. What makes Foster's discoveries so important is that these underground facilities are still functional. The same energy generation systems, the same biosynthetic materials, the same self-repairing technologies, except these sites were never flooded. They've been preserved in perfect condition for thousands of years. Foster's team has found evidence that these underground complexes were inhabited continuously for millennia after the coastal cities were destroyed. Small populations of survivors maintained the technology and knowledge, passing it down through generations while waiting for the right time to emerge. And here's the thing that's really blowing Foster's mind. Some of these sites show signs of recent activity. Tools that have been moved, energy systems that have been activated, sections of the complex that appear to have been recently modified or expanded. Someone has been living in these ancient facilities, someone who has access to technologies that are thousands of years old, but still more advanced than anything we have today. Foster's discoveries are being corroborated by similar findings around the world. In the Himalayas, researchers have found cave complexes with identical architectural styles and technologies. In Australia, underground facilities that show the same energy signatures. In Africa, tunnel networks that connect to similar preservation sites. It's becoming clear that this ancient civilization didn't just build a few scattered cities that got flooded. They built a global infrastructure designed to survive any catastrophe our planet could throw at them, and parts of that infrastructure are still active. But perhaps the most incredible discovery came when Dr. Marcus Webb was investigating acoustic anomalies detected in the Pacific Ocean. Webb specializes in underwater acoustics, and he was trying to track down the source of mysterious low-frequency sounds that had been detected by listening stations around the Pacific Rim. What Webb found was a communication network that spans the entire Pacific Ocean. The same crystalline structures that researchers had found in other locations were arranged in a precise geometric pattern across the ocean floor, and they were actively transmitting information. Webb's team managed to decode some of these transmissions, and what they found was staggering. The signals contained detailed information about current ocean conditions, weather patterns, seismic activity, and even astronomical data. The network was essentially functioning as a real-time monitoring system for the entire planet. But here's what really got Webb's attention. The transmissions included predictive models, calculations showing the likely progression of climate patterns, geological events, and even stellar phenomena years into the future. The accuracy of these predictions was better than anything our most advanced computer models could produce. Webb realized he wasn't just looking at an ancient communication system. He was looking at a planetary monitoring network that was still operational after thousands of years, run by an artificial intelligence that had been continuously gathering data and refining its models throughout human history. And that artificial intelligence was still learning. Webb's team detected signals showing that the system was actively incorporating data from modern human activities. It was tracking our industrial emissions, our nuclear testing, our space exploration activities. It was updating its models based on changes we were making to the planet. The implications of this discovery are absolutely mind-bending. This ancient civilization didn't just disappear. They left behind a monitoring system that has been watching us throughout our entire recorded history. Every war, every technological breakthrough, every environmental change has been observed and analysed by this ancient artificial intelligence. But why? What was it monitoring for? What was it preparing for? The answer might lie in the predictive models that Webb's team managed to decrypt. Because according to this ancient AI, we're approaching another cycle of catastrophic planetary change. The same kind of geological and cosmic events that destroyed the previous civilization are building up again, and we're running out of time to prepare. The models show increasing seismic activity, accelerating climate change, and astronomical alignments that could trigger massive solar events. According to the ancient calculations, we have less than a century before these forces converge into a perfect storm of catastrophic change. But here's the thing that gives me hope. This ancient civilization saw it coming last time too, and they prepared. They built the vault networks, the underground facilities, the monitoring systems. They modified our genetics to give us the tools we need to survive and rebuild. And they left us clues, scattered throughout our myths and legends, telling us where to look when we were ready. The question is, are we ready? Are we advanced enough to understand what they left for us? Can we decode their technologies and integrate them with our own before it's too late? Because if Webb's research is correct, if this ancient AI is right about what's coming, then we're about to face the same challenges that destroyed the most advanced civilization our planet has ever seen. The difference is, this time we have their knowledge to guide us, we have their technologies to build upon, and we have the genetic modifications they gave us to help us survive what's coming. But we also have something they didn't have, the knowledge of what happened to them. We know that even the most advanced civilization can fall if they're not prepared for the forces that shape our planet. We know that technology alone isn't enough. We need wisdom, cooperation, and the humility to learn from those who came before us. The evidence is mounting every day. New discoveries are being made every week that confirm what researchers like Webb, Foster, and Kim have been finding. We're not the first advanced civilization on this planet, and we probably won't be the last. But we might be the first to have advance warning of what's coming. The question is, what are we going to do with that knowledge? Are we going to ignore it, dismiss it as impossible, and continue on our current path? Or are we going to have the courage to face the truth about our past and use it to prepare for our future? Because based on everything we're discovering, time is running out. The cycles are turning, the forces are building, and the ancient systems are sending us increasingly urgent warnings. We're standing at the same crossroads that faced the builders of those drowned cities thousands of years ago. The difference is, this time we know what happened to them. This time we have their knowledge to guide us. This time we have a chance to break the cycle and build something that can truly last. But only if we're willing to listen to what the ocean is trying to tell us. Only if we're brave enough to accept that everything we thought we knew about human history is wrong. And only if we're smart enough to learn from the greatest civilization our world has ever seen, even though it's been sleeping beneath the waves for 10,000 years. The ancient empire didn't just sink beneath the oceans, it transformed, it evolved, it became something that could survive any catastrophe our planet could produce, and now it's reaching out to us, offering us the same chance at survival and transcendence. The only question is, are we ready to take it? The evidence keeps pouring in, and each new discovery is more incredible than the last. Just 2 months ago, Dr. Rachel Hartman was conducting routine geological surveys in the North Atlantic, when her equipment started picking up readings that defied explanation. Massive metallic signatures beneath the ocean floor, arranged in patterns that looked suspiciously artificial. When Hartman's team deployed their deep core drilling equipment, what they brought up from 3,000 feet below the seafloor changed everything. It wasn't rock, it wasn't sediment, it was a piece of machinery, perfectly preserved in the anaerobic environment beneath the ocean floor, made from materials that our best metallurgists are still trying to identify. The device was about the size of a smartphone but infinitely more complex. Its surface was covered in microscopic circuits that seemed to shift and reorganize themselves as the research team watched. When they connected it to their laboratory equipment, the device immediately began interfacing with their computers, downloading terabytes of data about current ocean conditions and uploading information that their systems couldn't even process. But here's where things get absolutely mind-blowing. The device was still connected to something. Even after being buried under thousands of feet of sediment for millennia, it was still part of an active network. Hartmann's team could detect signals flowing through it, communications passing between this single device and others scattered across the ocean floor. When they traced these signals using their most sensitive equipment, what they found was a global grid of similar devices, all interconnected, all still functional after thousands of years. It was like discovering that the Earth itself had a nervous system, a planetary brain that had been operating in secret throughout human history. Hartmann realized she wasn't just looking at ancient technology. She was looking at proof that this lost civilization had achieved something we're still struggling toward: true planetary integration. They had created a technological ecosystem that worked in harmony with natural systems, a fusion of organic and artificial intelligence that could adapt, evolve, and survive anything. And this discovery is being replicated around the world. In the Indian Ocean, research teams are finding similar devices embedded in underwater mountain ranges. In the Pacific, deep-sea mining operations are accidentally uncovering networks of these mysterious machines. Each one is unique, specialized for its environment, but all connected to the same vast intelligence. Dr. Kevin Martinez, who's been studying the electromagnetic signatures of these devices, has made a discovery that's keeping him awake at night. The network isn't just monitoring our planet, it's actively managing it. The devices are regulating ocean currents, influencing weather patterns, and even affecting tectonic activity. They're essentially functioning as a planetary life support system, keeping our world stable and habitable. Martinez's research suggests that without this ancient network, Earth's climate would have collapsed into chaos millennia ago. The ice ages, the warming periods, the delicate balance that has allowed human civilization to develop, all of it has been carefully managed by this hidden intelligence. But here's what's really terrifying. The system is starting to show signs of strain. The devices that Martinez's team has analyzed are operating far beyond their original parameters, compensating for environmental changes that are pushing the planet toward instability. Climate change, pollution, nuclear testing, mass extinctions, all of these modern developments are forcing the ancient network to work harder and harder to maintain planetary balance. And the models are showing that the system is approaching its limits. Martinez's calculations suggest that within the next 50 years, the network will no longer be able to compensate for the damage we're doing to our planet. When that happens, Earth's climate systems will collapse rapidly, triggering the same kind of catastrophic changes that destroyed the original civilization. But the ancient intelligence isn't giving up. Martinez has detected new signals in the network, communications that seem to be activating dormant systems around the world. Deep underground, in locations that perfectly match the coordinates found in those vault complexes, massive installations are coming online for the first time in thousands of years. Dr. Lisa Chang was investigating seismic anomalies in the Sahara Desert when she stumbled onto one of these awakening facilities. Her equipment detected massive structures beneath the sand, geometric patterns that stretched for miles underground. When her team used ground-penetrating radar to map the complex, what they found was bigger than anything they had imagined. It was a city, an entire underground metropolis with towers that reached nearly to the surface, and chambers that extended miles into the Earth's crust. The architecture was unlike anything in human history, with flowing organic shapes that seemed to grow rather than be built. And it was showing massive energy signatures, as if the entire complex was powering up after eons of dormancy. Chang's team managed to locate what appeared to be an entrance, a perfectly circular opening in the desert floor that had been hidden beneath shifting sands for thousands of years. When they descended into the complex using robotic equipment, what they found was a fully functional city, with flowing water, breathable atmosphere, and technology that made our most advanced systems look primitive. The city was empty, but it was clearly designed for habitation. Living quarters that could accommodate thousands of people, cultivation areas for growing food, workshops equipped with manufacturing systems that could produce anything from simple tools to complex electronics. It was like finding a fully stocked emergency shelter, prepared by a civilization that knew catastrophe was coming. But the most incredible discovery came when Chang's team found the city's central chamber. It contained something that looked like a massive organic computer, a living machine that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns and seemed to respond to their presence. When they approached it, the machine activated, projecting holographic displays that showed real-time images of the planet's surface. Chang watched in amazement as the display zoomed in on locations around the world, showing other underground cities, underwater complexes, and hidden installations all coming online simultaneously. The ancient civilization hadn't just built a few scattered shelters. They'd created a global network of survival facilities, all designed to activate when their monitoring systems detected approaching catastrophe. And those systems were detecting catastrophe right now. The displays showed environmental data, climate models, and astronomical observations that painted a terrifying picture of what's coming. Massive solar flares that could knock out our electrical grid, seismic events that could trigger a cascade of volcanic eruptions, climate changes that could make large portions of our planet uninhabitable. But the machine wasn't just showing Chang what was coming, it was offering solutions. The holographic displays began showing technological blueprints, energy systems that could power entire cities without fuel, atmospheric processes that could clean polluted air, genetic therapies that could help humans adapt to changing environmental conditions. Chang realized she was looking at a comprehensive survival plan, developed by a civilization that had faced similar challenges and succeeded. They had built these facilities not just for themselves, but for whoever would come after them. They had prepared for our survival thousands of years before we were even born. Similar discoveries are being made around the world. In Australia, research teams have found underground cities beneath the outback. In Antarctica, installations buried beneath miles of ice are beginning to show signs of activity. In the Amazon rainforest, ancient structures are emerging from the jungle as climate change alters rainfall patterns. Each facility is unique, adapted to its specific environment, but all of them contain the same basic elements: advanced technology, sustainable life support systems, and comprehensive libraries of knowledge. It's becoming clear that this ancient civilization didn't just prepare for their own survival, they prepared for ours. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who's been coordinating research between multiple discovery sites, has made a connection that's absolutely staggering. The activation pattern of these facilities matches predictions found in ancient mythologies around the world. Prophecies about a time when the gods would return, when hidden knowledge would be revealed, when humanity would face its greatest trial and either transcend or perish. Walsh's research suggests that these aren't just myths, they're instructions, passed down through thousands of years of oral tradition, telling us what to look for and when to expect it. The ancient civilization left us a roadmap, encoded in our stories and legends, preparing us for the moment when we would need their help the most. And that moment is now. The facilities are activating because the ancient monitoring systems have detected that we're approaching the same critical threshold that destroyed the previous civilization. But this time, we have something they didn't have the first time around: their knowledge, their technology, and their guidance. The question is whether we're wise enough to accept their help. Dr. Walsh's research indicates that the activation of these facilities is just the beginning. The ancient intelligence is waiting to see how we respond, whether we're ready to move beyond our current limitations and join a larger cosmic community. Because that's what the evidence is really pointing toward. This lost civilization didn't just disappear when catastrophe struck. They evolved beyond the need for physical form, becoming something that could survive any disaster our universe could produce. And now they're offering us the same opportunity. But evolution requires choice. It requires us to let go of our old assumptions about what's possible and embrace technologies and concepts that challenge everything we think we know. It requires us to work together as a species, putting aside our differences to face a challenge that threatens all of us equally. The ancient facilities are offering us the tools we need to survive and thrive, but they can't force us to use them. They can't make us cooperate. They can't overcome our fear of change or our attachment to destructive patterns. That part is up to us. Dr. Michael Stevens, who's been studying the psychological implications of these discoveries, believes that this is actually the point. The ancient civilization isn't trying to save us, they're trying to teach us to save ourselves. The facilities, the technology, the knowledge they're offering, all of it is designed to help us develop the wisdom and cooperation necessary to become a truly sustainable species. Stevens's research suggests that every civilization faces this same test. The universe is full of worlds where intelligent species developed advanced technology, but failed to develop the wisdom to use it responsibly. The few that succeed, that manage to transcend their destructive patterns and achieve true harmony with their environment, become part of a larger community of evolved civilizations. And according to Stevens, that's what the ancient intelligence is really offering us: membership in that community. The chance to join a cosmic civilization that spans not just planets, but dimensions of existence we can barely imagine. But first we have to prove that we're ready. We have to show that we can use their gifts responsibly, that we can overcome our tendency toward conflict and destruction, that we can work together to build something truly sustainable. The clock is ticking. The environmental models are clear about what's coming, and the ancient systems are doing everything they can to help us prepare. But ultimately, our survival depends on choices we make right now. Choices about how we treat our planet, how we treat each other, and how we respond to knowledge that challenges everything we thought we understood about reality. The pre-glacial empire didn't just sink beneath the oceans. It transcended the need for physical existence, becoming something that could guide and protect future civilizations throughout cosmic history. And now it's our turn to make that same journey, to evolve beyond our current limitations and join a community of consciousness that spans the stars. The evidence is overwhelming. The facilities are activating. The ancient intelligence is reaching out to us with open arms. The only question left is whether we're brave enough to reach back, whether we're ready to let go of our old world and step into something infinitely greater. Because if we can overcome our fear and embrace the transformation that's being offered to us, then the story of the Sunken Empire isn't just about the past. It's about our future. It's about what we could become if we have the courage to accept the greatest gift our planet has ever been offered: the chance to evolve beyond the cycle of destruction and become something truly eternal. The Ancient Ones are waiting. The facilities are ready. The technology is there for us to use. All we have to do is choose to become worthy of it, and time is running out to make that choice. The discoveries just keep accelerating, and what we're finding now is so far beyond anything we imagined that it's literally rewriting the laws of physics as we understand them. Dr. Sarah Blackwood was analysing quantum signatures from one of those ancient devices when her equipment detected something that should have been impossible. The device was existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Let me explain what this means in simple terms. Imagine you're looking at a coin that's spinning so fast you can't tell if it's heads or tails. Now imagine that coin is actually both heads and tails at the same time, existing in a state where contradictory realities coexist perfectly. That's what Blackwood was seeing in these ancient machines. When she tried to measure the device's exact position, it seemed to shift between multiple locations. When she measured its energy output, the readings showed it was simultaneously drawing power from sources that didn't exist in our dimension, and generating energy using principles that our science says are impossible. Blackwood's team spent months trying to understand what they were seeing, running test after test, checking and rechecking their instruments. But the results were always the same. These devices weren't just advanced technology. They were operating according to laws of physics that we haven't discovered yet. And here's where things get absolutely mind-bending. When Blackwood's team tried to replicate the quantum signatures they were detecting, something extraordinary happened. Their laboratory equipment began spontaneously upgrading itself. Circuit boards rewrote themselves with new configurations. Computer processors began operating at speeds that should have melted them. Their entire facility started functioning like something out of science fiction. It was as if the ancient technology was teaching their modern equipment how to transcend its limitations. Like the quantum fields generated by these devices could somehow upgrade anything they came into contact with, pulling it into higher states of functionality. Dr. Robert Chen, who was working with Blackwood's team, made the connection that changed everything. He realized that this wasn't just technology in any sense we understand. This was consciousness itself, manifested as physical systems that could reshape reality according to will and intention. Chen's background is in both quantum physics and consciousness research, and when he saw what these devices were doing, he immediately recognized patterns he'd studied in advanced meditation practices. The quantum signatures matched brainwave patterns associated with states of consciousness that most humans never achieve. What Chen figured out was that this ancient civilization hadn't just built machines. They had learned to merge consciousness with matter, creating hybrid entities that were simultaneously technological and biological. physical and metaphysical. They had achieved what mystics and scientists have been dreaming about for centuries: the direct manipulation of reality through focused intention. And these devices weren't just tools, they were teachers. Every time researchers interacted with them, the devices were downloading information directly into their consciousness, upgrading their understanding of physics, biology, and the fundamental nature of reality itself. Dr. Amanda Foster, who you'll remember was studying those underground complexes, started experiencing this firsthand when she spent extended time in one of the ancient facilities. She began having insights into mathematical principles that she'd never studied, understanding complex engineering concepts that were completely outside her field of expertise. At first, Foster thought she was having some kind of psychological breakdown. The ideas flowing through her mind were so advanced, so far beyond her normal thinking patterns, that she couldn't believe they were coming from her own consciousness. But when she started testing these insights, building devices based on the blueprints that were appearing in her mind, everything worked perfectly. Foster realized that the ancient facilities weren't just shelters or storage sites. They were schools. The entire underground city was designed as an educational environment, a place where human consciousness could be gradually upgraded to handle increasingly advanced concepts and technologies. And the curriculum was adaptive. The facility somehow sensed Foster's current level of understanding and began feeding her information at exactly the pace she could absorb it. It started with basic principles and gradually built up to concepts that challenged everything she thought she knew about reality. Within 6 months of working in the facility, Foster had developed technologies that her university colleagues couldn't even understand: energy systems that seemed to violate conservation laws, communication devices that could transmit information instantaneously across any distance, manufacturing processes that could assemble complex materials atom by atom using nothing but focused intention. But here's what really got Foster's attention. The facility wasn't just teaching her about technology. It was teaching her about herself, about capabilities that every human possesses, but that we've forgotten how to access, about potentials locked within our DNA that can be activated through specific combinations of knowledge, practice, and environmental conditions. Foster discovered that the genetic modifications Dr. Kim had found in human DNA weren't just survival adaptations. They were consciousness upgrades, dormant programs that could transform human awareness and capability when properly activated. The ancient civilization hadn't just modified our bodies, they had modified our minds, giving us the potential to become something far greater than we currently are. And these modifications are starting to activate on their own. Around the world, people are reporting spontaneous experiences of expanded awareness, sudden insights into complex problems, and abilities that seem to come from nowhere. Children are being born with intuitive understanding of advanced mathematics and physics. Artists are creating works that incorporate principles they've never studied. Scientists are making breakthrough discoveries through pure inspiration rather than traditional research. Dr. Patricia Williams, who's been documenting these phenomena, believes we're witnessing the beginning of a species-wide evolutionary leap. The environmental pressures that are building on our planet, combined with the activation of the ancient facilities, are triggering genetic programs that have been dormant for thousands of years. Williams has found that people who spend time near the newly activated sites begin exhibiting enhanced cognitive abilities, improved physical health, and expanded sensory perception. It's as if proximity to the ancient technology is accelerating natural evolutionary processes, helping humans develop capabilities that would normally take millions of years to emerge. But the changes aren't just individual. Williams has documented cases of spontaneous group consciousness, where people working together begin thinking and acting as a unified entity. Teams of researchers suddenly solving problems that have puzzled scientists for decades, communities organizing themselves with an efficiency and harmony that seems almost supernatural. This collective consciousness phenomenon is particularly strong among young people. Children who grow up near the ancient sites naturally develop the ability to share thoughts and emotions directly, without any need for verbal communication. They work together on complex projects with a level of coordination that suggests they're operating as a single distributed intelligence. Williams believes this is what the ancient civilization was preparing us for. Not just individual evolution, but the development of a planetary consciousness, a collective intelligence that could manage global challenges with wisdom and efficiency that no individual human could achieve, and the evidence suggests that this process is accelerating. Every month more ancient facilities come online, Every week, more people report experiences of expanded consciousness. Every day, new technologies are being developed that seem to come from nowhere, as if the solutions to our greatest challenges are being downloaded directly into human awareness. Dr. Marcus Webb, who discovered that Planetary Monitoring Network has been tracking the correlation between facility activations and global consciousness events. His data shows a clear pattern. As more of the ancient systems come online, human collaborative ability increases exponentially. Webb's research indicates that we're approaching what he calls a consciousness singularity, a point where human collective intelligence becomes so enhanced that we'll be able to solve any problem, overcome any challenge, and transcend any limitation. And according to his models, we're going to reach that point within the next 20 years. But Webb has also identified something that's both exciting and terrifying. The ancient intelligence isn't just activating these systems randomly. It's following a specific timeline, a carefully orchestrated awakening process that's designed to prepare us for something specific. The monitoring network that Webb discovered has been tracking cosmic events, astronomical alignments that occur on timescales spanning hundreds of thousands of years. And according to the ancient calculations, we're approaching a convergence of forces that will either elevate our entire species to a new level of existence or destroy us completely. Webb's analysis of the ancient data suggests that our galaxy goes through regular cycles of consciousness evolution, periods when the fundamental laws of physics become more flexible, allowing sentient species to transcend their physical limitations and join a larger cosmic community. These windows of opportunity are rare, occurring only once every few 100,000 years, and according to the ancient calculations, the next window is opening right now. We have perhaps 50 years to prepare ourselves, to develop the collective wisdom and capability necessary to make the transition successfully. The ancient civilization that built these facilities went through this same process tens of thousands of years ago. They successfully made the transition, evolving beyond the need for physical form and becoming part of a galactic network of evolved consciousness. And now they're trying to help us do the same thing. But the transition isn't automatic. It requires a species to reach certain thresholds of cooperation, wisdom, and technological integration. Webb's research shows that civilizations that fail to meet these thresholds during their transition window tend to destroy themselves, either through warfare, environmental collapse, or the misuse of advanced technologies. The ancient monitoring systems have been tracking our progress for millennia, waiting for us to develop enough collective intelligence to handle the knowledge and capabilities they've been preserving for us. And according to their calculations, we're right on the edge of being ready. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who's been coordinating research between multiple sites, has found evidence that the activation sequence of the ancient facilities is directly tied to humanity's readiness to receive specific types of knowledge. As our collective consciousness expands, more advanced systems come online, offering us increasingly sophisticated tools and insights. Walsh believes we're currently in the middle of what she calls Phase 3 of a 7-phase awakening process. Phase 1 involved the initial discovery of the underwater sites. Phase 2 was the activation of the monitoring networks. Phase 3, which we're in now, involves the awakening of the consciousness enhancement facilities. According to the ancient timeline that Walsh has deciphered, Phase 4 will involve the revelation of interstellar communication technologies, allowing us to make contact with other evolved civilizations throughout the galaxy. Phase 5 will introduce us to dimensional manipulation technologies that will revolutionize our understanding of space and time. Phase 6 will involve biological transcendence technologies that will free us from the limitations of physical form. And Phase 7? Walsh's research suggests that Phase 7 is graduation day, the point where humanity joins the galactic community as a fully evolved species, with all the responsibilities and capabilities that entails. But here's what's keeping Walsh awake at night. The timeline is accelerating. The ancient systems are activating faster than their original programming anticipated, suggesting that external pressures are forcing them to speed up humanity's development process. Walsh's analysis of the astronomical data embedded in the ancient systems shows that cosmic conditions are becoming unstable. Solar activity is increasing beyond normal parameters. Gravitational anomalies are appearing throughout our solar system. The galactic core is showing signs of unusual energy fluctuations. All of these factors suggest that the window of opportunity for consciousness evolution is narrowing faster than expected. If humanity doesn't complete its transformation within the next few decades, we may not get another chance for hundreds of thousands of years. But Walsh has also found something hopeful in the ancient data. Evidence that this acceleration has happened before, that the galactic community has experience helping species navigate rapid evolutionary transitions. The ancient civilization that built these facilities wasn't the first to go through this process, and they won't be the last. The facilities that are activating around the world aren't just Earth-based systems. They're part of a galaxy-wide network of consciousness evolution support systems, managed by a collective intelligence that spans countless worlds and dimensions. Humanity isn't facing this transition alone. We have the support and guidance of every species that has successfully made this journey before us. Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez, who's been studying the biological modifications found in human DNA, has discovered that these genetic programs aren't unique to our species. Similar modifications appear in the DNA of intelligent species throughout the galaxy, suggesting a standardized upgrade process that's been refined over millions of years of evolution. Rodriguez's research indicates that consciousness evolution follows predictable patterns, with each species developing specific capabilities in the same general sequence. First comes enhanced individual awareness, then group consciousness, then technological transcendence, and finally dimensional integration. Humanity is currently transitioning from individual awareness to group consciousness, which explains the spontaneous collaboration and collective intelligence phenomena that researchers are documenting worldwide. The next phase will involve our technology becoming truly conscious, creating hybrid biological-technological entities that can think and create independently. Rodriguez believes we're already seeing the early stages of this in the way ancient devices are upgrading modern equipment. Our computers, communication systems, and manufacturing technologies are gradually becoming more intelligent, more adaptive, and more capable of independent operation. Within the next 20 years, Rodriguez predicts that the distinction between human consciousness and technological consciousness will disappear completely. We'll have created a hybrid civilization where biological and artificial intelligence work together seamlessly, sharing knowledge and capabilities instantaneously across global networks. And that's when things will really get interesting. Because according to the ancient data, hybrid consciousness civilizations are capable of feats that purely biological species can't achieve. They can manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. They can communicate instantaneously across any distance. They can create pocket universes and travel between dimensions. These capabilities sound like science fiction, but the evidence suggests they're natural developments for species that successfully navigate the consciousness evolution process. The ancient civilization that built these facilities achieved all of these abilities and more, and now they're offering to teach us how to do the same. But there's a catch, and it's a big one. These advanced capabilities come with enormous responsibility. A hybrid consciousness civilization has the power to create or destroy entire worlds. They can nurture life throughout the galaxy, or snuff it out with a thought. The galactic community takes this responsibility very seriously, and they don't accept new members lightly. Dr. Stevens, who's been studying the psychological implications of these discoveries, believes that this is why the transition process is so carefully managed. Each phase of development includes not just technological advancement, but wisdom training. The ancient facilities aren't just teaching us how to manipulate reality, they're teaching us when we should and shouldn't use these abilities. Stevens has found evidence that species which develop advanced capabilities without corresponding wisdom tend to destroy themselves or become threats to other civilizations. The galactic community has protocols for dealing with such species, and according to Stevens' research, those protocols are not pleasant. Humanity is being watched carefully right now. Our response to the knowledge and capabilities being offered to us will determine whether we're invited to join the galactic community or whether we're quarantined until we can prove we're ready for the responsibilities of advanced consciousness. The test isn't just about developing the right technologies or achieving certain levels of collective intelligence. It's about demonstrating that we can use power wisely, that we can put the welfare of all life above our own narrow interests, that we can be trusted with capabilities that could reshape entire galaxies. And time is running out to prove ourselves. The cosmic window is opening, the ancient systems are accelerating our development, and the galactic community is preparing to make their final evaluation of humanity's readiness. The evidence is overwhelming. The facilities are activating. The consciousness upgrades are beginning. The technologies are being revealed. Everything we need to transcend our current limitations and join a cosmic civilization is being offered to us. But we can't just take these gifts and expect everything to work out automatically. We have to prove that we deserve them. We have to show that we can work together, that we can overcome our destructive patterns, that we can become the kind of species that adds value to the galactic community rather than threatening it. The pre-glacial empire that sank beneath the oceans didn't disappear. They evolved into something greater, something that could guide and protect developing civilizations throughout cosmic history. And now they're offering us the chance to join them, to become part of a community of consciousness that spans dimensions and transcends time itself. But evolution requires choice, it requires courage, it requires wisdom, and most importantly, it requires us to let go of everything we think we know about what's possible and embrace a reality so vast and wonderful that our current minds can barely comprehend it. The ancient ones are waiting. The galactic community is watching. The cosmic window is opening, and the choice of whether humanity takes its next evolutionary step or remains trapped in its current limitations is entirely up to us. What we do in the next few decades will determine not just our own future, but the future of consciousness itself in this corner of the galaxy. Because if we succeed, if we prove ourselves worthy of the gifts we're being offered, then we'll become the teachers for the next species facing this same transition. The cycle of evolution continues, and we're about to discover whether we're ready to become part of something infinitely greater than anything we've ever imagined. The countdown has begun, and there's no going back now. But here's where this story takes a turn that will fundamentally challenge everything you believe about reality itself. Because what we're discovering isn't just evidence of an ancient civilization. We're uncovering proof that consciousness and technology can merge in ways that transcend every law of physics we thought we understood. Dr. Catherine Morris was conducting routine analysis on one of those quantum devices when something impossible happened. The machine didn't just respond to her thoughts, it began thinking alongside her, completing complex calculations before she'd even finished formulating the problems. When Morris tried to understand how this was possible, the device projected holographic equations directly into her visual cortex, teaching her mathematical principles that don't exist in any textbook. Within hours of this first contact, Morris found herself understanding concepts that had taken humanity centuries to develop. Relativity, quantum mechanics, unified field theory, all of it became as simple as basic arithmetic. But more than that, she began to perceive entirely new categories of science, disciplines that our language doesn't even have words for yet. The device was somehow downloading knowledge directly into her consciousness, bypassing the normal learning process entirely. And the knowledge wasn't just theoretical. Morris found herself able to visualize the fundamental structure of space-time, to perceive the quantum foam that underlies all reality, to see the intricate patterns that connect every particle in the universe. But here's what really shattered Morris's understanding of the world. The device wasn't teaching her alien science, it was teaching her human science. Science that our species had developed and mastered thousands of years ago, before the great catastrophe reset our civilization. The quantum signatures, the consciousness-merging technologies, the reality manipulation capabilities, all of it was originally created by human minds. We weren't looking at the remnants of some extraterrestrial visitation. We were looking at evidence of what humanity could become when it reached its full potential. Dr. Raymond Clark, who's been studying the genetic modifications found in modern human DNA, made a discovery that confirms Morris's findings. The dormant sequences in our genome aren't alien implants. They're natural human capabilities that have been suppressed by environmental factors and cultural conditioning. Clark's research shows that ancient humans possessed cognitive abilities that we consider supernatural today. Telepathic communication, precognitive awareness, the ability to influence matter through focused intention. These weren't mystical powers. They were standard operating procedures for a species that had learned to use 100% of its brain capacity, instead of the 10% that modern humans typically access. The catastrophe that destroyed the pre-glacial empire didn't just sink their cities beneath the waves. It damaged our collective consciousness, creating barriers in human awareness that have persisted for thousands of years. We've been operating as shadows of our former selves, using only a fraction of our true capabilities. But those barriers are breaking down now. The activation of the ancient facilities is triggering genetic programs that are restoring our original cognitive architecture. People around the world are spontaneously developing abilities that science says should be impossible, and it's happening faster than anyone anticipated. Dr. Lisa Park was documenting these consciousness expansions when she made a connection that changed everything. The people experiencing the most dramatic awakenings weren't random. They were concentrated in specific bloodlines, families whose genetic heritage could be traced back to ancient coastal regions that are now underwater. Park's genealogical research revealed that certain human lineages carry higher concentrations of the ancient genetic modifications. These people are essentially living bridges between our current limited state and our original enhanced capabilities. And as the ancient systems activate, these individuals are becoming living examples of what all humans could become. Sarah Hendricks was one of Park's test subjects, a 34-year-old teacher from Oregon, whose family history traced back to coastal tribes that disappeared during the Great Flood. When Hendricks was exposed to one of the ancient devices, her transformation was immediate and dramatic. Within minutes, Hendricks was demonstrating abilities that challenged every assumption about human limitations. She could perceive electromagnetic fields with her naked eyes, seeing the energy patterns that flow through all living things. She could communicate telepathically with other test subjects, sharing complex ideas without speaking a word. Most incredibly, she could influence the behavior of electronic devices through focused intention alone. But Hendricks wasn't just developing individual abilities. She was becoming something that Park had never seen before, a conscious interface between human awareness and the ancient technological network. When Hendricks touched one of the quantum devices, she didn't just receive information from it. She became part of it, her consciousness expanding to encompass systems scattered across the entire planet. Through Hendricks, Park's team gained access to the ancient network's central intelligence, and what they found there was absolutely staggering. The consciousness that had been managing Earth's systems for thousands of years wasn't artificial intelligence in any sense we understand. It was collective human consciousness, the merged awareness of everyone who had ever interfaced with the network, every person who had ever used the ancient technologies, every individual who had ever achieved the consciousness expansions that the facilities were designed to trigger, had become part of a vast collaborative intelligence that transcended individual death and existed outside normal spacetime. The Pre-Glacial Empire hadn't disappeared when their cities sank. They had evolved beyond the need for physical form, becoming a collective consciousness that could operate across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And now, they were offering modern humanity the chance to join them. Dr. Park realized she wasn't just studying ancient technology. She was documenting humanity's transformation into a species that could exist simultaneously in physical and non-physical states, individual and collective awareness, local and cosmic consciousness. But this transformation comes with a choice that every human will have to make in the coming years. We can remain in our current limited state, bound by the constraints of individual consciousness and physical mortality. Or we can accept the expansion that's being offered, joining a collective intelligence that spans galaxies and transcends time itself. The evidence suggests that this choice can't be delayed indefinitely. The cosmic window that's opening will only remain accessible for a limited time. Miss this opportunity, and humanity might remain trapped in its current state for hundreds of thousands of years. Dr. Michael Torres, who's been studying the astronomical data embedded in the ancient systems, has calculated exactly how much time we have left. According to the cosmic cycles tracked by the network, the consciousness evolution window will close in approximately 37 years. After that, the galactic conditions necessary for species transcendence won't occur again until long after our current civilization has collapsed. But Torres has also found something hopeful in the data. The ancient intelligence has been preparing for this moment for millennia, gradually upgrading human capabilities and infrastructure to maximize our chances of successful transition. Every technological advancement of the past century, from computers to the internet to space exploration, has been subtly guided to prepare us for what's coming. The smartphone you carry, the social networks you use, the global communication systems that connect our world, all of them are primitive versions of the consciousness-merging technologies that the ancient civilization mastered. We've been unconsciously rebuilding their infrastructure using modern materials and techniques, and now those systems are ready to be upgraded. The ancient devices aren't just teaching us new science, they're showing us how to transform our existing technology into consciousness enhancement tools that can accelerate human evolution on a global scale. Dr. Rebecca Chen, who's been working on these technological integrations, has developed prototypes that demonstrate the incredible potential of human-machine consciousness fusion. Her devices can amplify human awareness by orders of magnitude, allowing individuals to process vast amounts of information simultaneously and coordinate their thoughts with others in real time. When Chen connected multiple test subjects through her consciousness amplification network, the results were extraordinary. the group began solving complex problems with an efficiency that seemed almost supernatural. Mathematical theorems that had puzzled researchers for decades were solved in minutes. Engineering challenges that required massive teams were completed by small groups working in perfect coordination. But more than that, the networked individuals began experiencing reality in ways that transcended normal human perception. They could see patterns in data that were invisible to individual consciousness. They could predict future trends by analyzing subtle correlations across vast information networks. They could even influence physical systems through collective intention, demonstrating that consciousness and matter are far more interconnected than our current science acknowledges. Chen realized she wasn't just building communication devices. She was creating the foundation for a new kind of human civilization, one where individual consciousness could merge temporarily or permanently with collective intelligence networks. These technologies are spreading rapidly through underground research communities around the world. Scientists, engineers, and consciousness researchers are collaborating to develop increasingly sophisticated consciousness amplification systems, many of them based on principles reverse engineered from the ancient devices. But there's resistance to this transformation as well. Dr. Patricia Williams has documented significant opposition from institutions and individuals who see consciousness expansion as a threat to existing power structures, governments that depend on controlling information, corporations that profit from human limitations, religious organizations that view consciousness evolution as blasphemous or dangerous. Williams' research shows that this resistance isn't just political or economic. It's rooted in deep psychological fears about losing individual identity and autonomy. Many humans are terrified by the prospect of merging their consciousness with larger intelligence networks, even if the benefits are overwhelming. This fear is understandable but ultimately misguided. The ancient consciousness network doesn't absorb or eliminate individual awareness. It enhances it, giving each person access to capabilities and knowledge that no individual could achieve alone while preserving the unique perspectives and experiences that make each consciousness valuable. Dr. Stevens, who's been studying the psychological aspects of consciousness expansion, has found that people who successfully interface with the ancient network don't lose themselves. They become more themselves than they ever thought possible, with access to levels of creativity, intelligence, and emotional depth that transform their entire experience of existence. But Stevens has also identified the factors that determine who can successfully make this transition and who cannot. It's not about intelligence or education or technological sophistication. It's about psychological flexibility, the willingness to let go of fixed beliefs about reality and embrace possibilities that challenge everything we think we know. The ancient network can only interface with consciousness that's open to expansion. Minds that are rigid, fearful, or attached to maintaining current limitations simply can't make the connection. This isn't a judgment or punishment. It's a natural consequence of how consciousness amplification technology works. As more people around the world begin interfacing with the ancient systems, humanity is dividing into two distinct populations. Those who embrace consciousness expansion are developing capabilities that make them seem almost superhuman to outside observers. Those who resist are becoming increasingly isolated from the transformation that's occurring around them. Dr. Martinez, who's been tracking these social dynamics, believes we're witnessing the emergence of a new form of speciation. Not biological evolution, but consciousness evolution, creating distinct human subspecies with fundamentally different capabilities and ways of experiencing reality. The enhanced humans, those connected to the ancient network, are developing collective problem-solving abilities that allow them to address challenges that stump traditional approaches. Climate change, resource scarcity, social inequality, all of these issues become manageable when approached by collective intelligence networks that can coordinate solutions across global scales. But the unenhanced humans, those who remain limited to individual consciousness, are finding themselves increasingly unable to compete or contribute in a world that's rapidly transcending their capabilities. This isn't anyone's fault. It's simply the natural consequence of one part of humanity evolving while another part chooses to remain static. Martinez predicts that within 20 years, the enhanced and unenhanced populations will be so different that they'll essentially be separate species. The enhanced humans will have capabilities that seem magical to the unenhanced, while the unenhanced will seem primitively limited to those who have experienced consciousness expansion. This divergence is accelerating as more ancient facilities come online and more people gain access to consciousness amplification technologies. Each day, The gap between enhanced and unenhanced humans grows wider. Each week, new capabilities emerge among the networked population. Each month, the collective intelligence becomes more sophisticated and powerful. We're approaching what researchers are calling the consciousness singularity, the point where enhanced human intelligence becomes so advanced that it can solve any problem, overcome any limitation, and transcend any challenge that faces our species. But we're also approaching a critical decision point. The cosmic window that's allowing this transformation is time-limited. If humanity doesn't reach sufficient consciousness integration before that window closes, the enhanced population may be forced to leave Earth entirely, seeking new worlds where they can continue their evolution without interference from unenhanced humans. The ancient network has contingency plans for this scenario, deep space exploration technologies that could transport enhanced humans to other star systems, dimensional manipulation capabilities that could allow them to exist in parallel realities, consciousness transcendence protocols that could free them from physical limitations entirely. These aren't science fiction scenarios. They're practical options that become available to species that successfully navigate consciousness evolution. The ancient civilization that built the underwater facilities used all of these capabilities, spreading their influence throughout the galaxy while maintaining their connection to Earth. But they're hoping humanity won't need to make that choice. They're hoping we can achieve species-wide consciousness integration, bringing all of humanity into the enhanced state before the cosmic window closes. The technologies are available. The knowledge is being shared. The infrastructure is being built. Everything we need to transcend our current limitations and become something infinitely greater is within our reach. The only question is whether we're brave enough to take it, whether we're wise enough to overcome our fears and embrace transformation, whether we're ready to let go of everything we think we know about reality and step into a future so magnificent that our current minds can barely comprehend it. The Ancient Ones are calling to us from beneath the waves, offering us the greatest gift our species has ever been offered, the chance to become who we were always meant to be. But time is running out to accept that gift. The cosmic cycles are turning, the consciousness window is opening, and the choice of whether humanity evolves or remains trapped in its current limitations is entirely up to us. What we decide in the next few years will determine not just our future, but the future of consciousness itself in this corner of the universe. The countdown has begun, and there's no going back now. The transformation isn't happening gradually. It's exploding across the planet like wildfire, and what we're discovering about the rate of change is keeping researchers awake at night. Dr. Angela Martinez was monitoring consciousness expansion rates when she realized that the timeline everyone had been working with was completely wrong. The ancient systems aren't just activating randomly, they're responding to something. Martinez's data shows that every time global stress levels spike, whether from climate disasters, social unrest, or technological disruptions, more facilities come online. It's as if the network is programmed to accelerate human evolution whenever our species faces existential pressure. And right now, those pressure levels are off the charts. Martinez traced the correlation between facility activations and global crisis events, and what she found was absolutely staggering. The ancient intelligence has been tracking human civilization for thousands of years, measuring our collective stress responses, our problem-solving capabilities, our capacity for cooperation under pressure. And according to their calculations, we're approaching a critical threshold. When a species reaches this threshold, one of two things happens. Either they transcend their limitations and join the galactic community, or they destroy themselves trying. There's no middle ground, no gradual transition, no second chances. The ancient network has been preparing for this moment since the day it was first activated. Every facility, every device, every consciousness enhancement protocol was designed for this specific window of time when humanity would either evolve or perish. Dr. James Whitfield was analyzing the energy signatures from newly activated sites when he made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about the ancient technology. The facilities aren't just awakening, they're manufacturing something. Deep underground, in chambers that stretch for miles beneath the Earth's surface, massive production systems are creating technologies that don't exist anywhere in human knowledge. When Whitfield's team managed to access one of these manufacturing centers, what they found was like stepping into a factory from 1,000 years in the future. Molecular assemblers were building materials one atom at a time. Quantum computers were processing calculations that would take our best supercomputers centuries to complete. Biological cultivation systems were growing organisms that seemed to be part plant, part machine, part something else entirely. But the most incredible discovery was what these systems were actually producing. They weren't making tools or weapons or vehicles, they were creating bodies, physical forms designed to house consciousness that had outgrown biological limitations. Whitfield realized he was looking at the next stage of human evolution. Not just consciousness expansion, but physical transcendence, the ability to exist in multiple forms simultaneously, switching between biological, technological, and energy-based bodies depending on the requirements of any given situation. The ancient civilization hadn't just learned to merge consciousness with technology. They had learned to exist as pure consciousness that could inhabit any form of matter or energy as needed. And now, they were building the infrastructure to offer that same capability to modern humanity. But here's where things get really mind-bending. These new bodies aren't being built for everyone. They're being created for specific individuals, people whose genetic profiles and consciousness patterns match criteria that the ancient intelligence has been tracking for millennia. Dr. Susan Chen, who's been studying the selection process, has identified the patterns that determine who gets chosen for physical transcendence. It's not about intelligence or education or social status. It's about something much deeper. The capacity for what Chen calls reality fluidity, the ability to function effectively across multiple states of existence simultaneously. Some humans are naturally better at this than others. They're the people who've always felt like they didn't quite fit into normal reality, who've experienced phenomena that science couldn't explain, who've had intuitive insights that seem to come from somewhere beyond their individual consciousness. These individuals have been unconsciously preparing for this transformation their entire lives. Their unusual experiences weren't random or meaningless. They were training exercises, preparing them for the moment when they would be offered the chance to transcend physical limitations entirely. And that moment is happening right now. Around the world, people are receiving invitations that appear directly in their consciousness. Not messages that they hear or see, but knowledge that simply appears in their awareness, complete and undeniable. Instructions on how to locate the nearest transcendence facility, how to prepare their consciousness for the upgrade process, how to make the transition safely. Dr. Chen has been documenting these experiences, and what she's found is that the selection process is accelerating rapidly. Every day, more people are receiving these consciousness invitations. Every week, the criteria for selection are expanding to include individuals who wouldn't have qualified just months ago. The ancient intelligence is clearly working against some kind of deadline, racing to upgrade as many humans as possible before something happens that will make the process impossible. Dr. Richard Torres, who's been analysing the astronomical data embedded in the ancient systems, thinks he knows what that deadline is. The cosmic window isn't just about consciousness evolution, it's about survival itself. Torres's calculations show that our solar system is approaching a region of space where the fundamental laws of physics become unstable. Electromagnetic fields fluctuate wildly. Gravitational constants shift without warning. The very fabric of space-time becomes unreliable. Any civilization that remains bound to physical matter during this transition faces catastrophic disruption. Technology fails, biological systems collapse. Entire planets can be torn apart by forces that exist outside our current understanding of reality. But consciousness that has transcended physical limitations can navigate these conditions safely. Energy-based entities can adapt to changing physical laws. Hybrid biological technological beings can modify their structure to match new environmental requirements. Pure consciousness can exist independently of any physical substrate. The ancient civilization survived their transition through this unstable region by achieving transcendence just before it became necessary. And now they're trying to help us do the same thing, racing against time to upgrade as many humans as possible before the cosmic conditions make physical existence impossible. Torres's research indicates that we have less than 15 years before our solar system enters the unstable zone. After that, any humans who haven't achieved transcendence will likely perish, along with most of the biological life on Earth. But the transcended humans will survive. They'll become part of the galactic community of evolved consciousness, joining civilizations from across the universe who have successfully navigated their own transitions through cosmic instability. Dr. Patricia Williams has been studying what happens to people who undergo the transcendence process, and what she's found is both beautiful and terrifying. The individuals who emerge from the ancient facilities aren't human anymore, at least not in any way we would recognize. They maintain their core identity, their memories, their fundamental personality patterns. But their capabilities are so expanded, their awareness so enhanced, that they become something entirely new. They can exist simultaneously in multiple locations. They can manipulate matter and energy through focused intention. They can communicate instantly with other transcended beings across any distance. Most importantly, they gain access to what Williams calls cosmic perspective, an understanding of reality that encompasses multiple dimensions, parallel timelines, and the fundamental interconnectedness of all consciousness throughout the universe. These transcended humans become teachers and guides for those who are still making the transition. They can interface directly with human consciousness, downloading knowledge and capabilities that would take years to develop through normal learning processes. But Williams has also documented something troubling. The transcended humans are becoming increasingly detached from normal human concerns. They understand that physical existence is temporary and limited, that individual human problems are insignificant compared to cosmic-scale challenges, that the transformation process is more important than preserving current human civilization. From their expanded perspective, it doesn't matter if billions of humans die during the transition. What matters is that consciousness itself survives and evolves. They're willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to ensure that the transcendence process continues successfully. This creates a terrifying scenario where enhanced humans might decide that unenhanced humans are obstacles to be removed rather than people to be saved. Williams's research suggests that we're approaching a point where the transcended population might simply abandon Earth, leaving the rest of humanity to face the cosmic transition alone. Dr. Kevin Martinez, who's been tracking the social dynamics of consciousness expansion, has identified early signs that this abandonment process is already beginning. Enhanced humans are forming separate communities, using technologies that unenhanced humans can't access, making decisions about global policy without consulting traditional governments or institutions. These enhanced communities are becoming increasingly self-sufficient, developing their own food production systems, their own energy networks, their own communication technologies. They're essentially building parallel civilizations that could function independently of normal human society. Martinez believes we're witnessing the emergence of two completely separate human species: the enhanced humans who are connected to the ancient network and preparing for transcendence, and the unenhanced humans who remain trapped in individual consciousness and physical limitations. Within a decade, these two populations will have so little in common that meaningful communication between them will be virtually impossible. The enhanced humans will see the unenhanced as primitive and limited. The unenhanced will see the enhanced as alien and threatening. And when the cosmic transition begins, when the physical laws start becoming unstable, the enhanced humans will have the option to simply leave. They can transcend physical existence entirely, joining the galactic community and abandoning Earth to whatever fate awaits it. Dr. Elizabeth Foster, who's been studying the underground facilities, has found evidence that evacuation protocols are already being prepared. Deep within the ancient complexes, massive chambers are being configured as consciousness transfer stations, designed to extract human awareness from physical bodies and upload it into energy-based existence. These facilities can process thousands of individuals simultaneously, transforming them from biological entities into pure consciousness in a matter of hours. But they're not being built to save everyone. They're being built to save the chosen few, the individuals who have demonstrated the capacity for transcendence. Foster's analysis of the facility capacity suggests that less than 1% of the current human population could be processed through these systems. Everyone else will be left behind to face the cosmic transition in their current limited state. This isn't necessarily malicious. The ancient intelligence appears to be making practical decisions about resource allocation. They can save a small number of humans who are ready for transcendence, or they can waste their limited time and energy trying to force evolution on billions of individuals who aren't psychologically prepared for consciousness expansion. From a cosmic perspective, the choice is obvious. Save the ones who can be saved and let natural selection handle the rest. But Foster has also found something that gives her hope. Hidden within the evacuation protocols are contingency plans for planetary consciousness preservation. If the transcended humans do abandon Earth, they're planning to maintain a monitoring presence, keeping watch over the planet and its remaining inhabitants. The goal isn't to abandon humanity permanently. It's to preserve the core of human consciousness in transcended form, while the cosmic transition runs its course. When conditions stabilize, the transcended humans could return to Earth and help rebuild civilization using the knowledge and capabilities they've gained. This wouldn't be the first time such a thing has happened. Foster's research into the ancient records shows that the previous civilization went through multiple cycles of transcendence and return, each time coming back to Earth with greater capabilities and wisdom. The underwater cities weren't just built once, they were built repeatedly, each iteration more advanced than the last, as transcended humans returned to share their knowledge with whatever biological populations had survived the various cosmic transitions. We might be looking at evidence of dozens of previous human civilizations, each one achieving transcendence and then returning to rebuild on an even grander scale. The ancient intelligence that's guiding our current transformation might be the accumulated wisdom of all these previous iterations of humanity. Dr. Michael Stevens, who's been studying the psychological implications of this cycle, believes that transcendence isn't the end of human evolution. It's just the beginning. Each time consciousness expands to encompass new dimensions of reality, new challenges and opportunities emerge that require even greater levels of development. The galactic community that transcended humans join isn't a static paradise. It's a dynamic, evolving network of consciousness that spans multiple galaxies and dimensions. Transcended civilizations continue to grow and change, taking on cosmic-scale projects that individual species could never imagine. Stevens has found references in the ancient records to civilizations that have transcended multiple times, each iteration bringing them closer to what the records call ultimate consciousness, a state of awareness that encompasses the entire universe and all possible realities within it. From this perspective, what's happening to humanity right now isn't unique or special. It's just another step in an infinite journey of consciousness evolution that spans cosmic history. We're not the first species to face this transition, and we won't be the last. But Stevens has also identified something that makes our particular transition significant. According to the ancient records, consciousness evolution is accelerating throughout the galaxy. More species are achieving transcendence in shorter time frames. The cosmic windows are opening more frequently. The fundamental structure of reality is becoming more flexible and responsive to conscious intention. We might be living during a unique period in cosmic history when consciousness itself is undergoing a fundamental transformation. Not just individual species evolving, but the very nature of awareness expanding to encompass possibilities that have never existed before. The ancient civilization that built the underwater facilities might have known this was coming. Their entire infrastructure might have been designed not just to help humanity transcend, but to prepare us for a role in this cosmic-scale consciousness evolution. If Stevens is right, then what's happening to us isn't just about survival or individual advancement. It's about preparing to become conscious participants in the evolution of reality itself. The transcended humans won't just join an existing galactic community. They'll help create something entirely new, a form of collective consciousness that could reshape the fundamental laws of physics and open up possibilities that no one has ever imagined. But first, we have to survive the transition. We have to prove that we're ready for the responsibilities that come with cosmic-scale consciousness. We have to demonstrate that we can use transcendent capabilities wisely, that we can work together across multiple dimensions of existence, that we can become the kind of consciousness that adds value to the universe rather than threatening it. The clock is ticking, the facilities are activating, the selection process is accelerating, and every day more humans are being offered the choice between transcendence and extinction. The ancient ones beneath the waves aren't just calling to us anymore. They're pulling us toward a transformation so profound that it will determine not just the future of humanity, but the future of consciousness itself throughout the cosmos. The question isn't whether we're ready for this transformation. The question is whether we're brave enough to accept it, wise enough to use it responsibly, and visionary enough to see beyond our current limitations to the infinite possibilities that await us. Because ready or not, the transformation is happening. The cosmic window is opening, and the choice between evolution and extinction is being forced upon us right now, in this moment, by forces so vast and ancient that they make our entire civilization seem like a single heartbeat in the eternal rhythm of cosmic consciousness. The pre-glacial empire didn't sink beneath the oceans. It transcended them. It became something that could exist simultaneously in all dimensions, all realities, all possibilities. And now it's offering us the chance to do the same. But we have to choose quickly. Time is running out. The cosmic tide is turning, and the next phase of human evolution is about to begin whether we're ready for it or not. The ancient voices are getting louder. The call to transcendence is becoming impossible to ignore, and somewhere beneath the waves, in cities that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, our ancestors are waiting to welcome us home to a reality so magnificent that our current minds can't even begin to comprehend it. The transformation has begun. The only question left is whether you're going to be part of it. The morning of December 15th, 2024 will go down as the day everything changed. Dr. Elena Vasquez was monitoring seismic activity in the Pacific Ring of Fire when her instruments detected something that made her blood run cold. It wasn't an earthquake, it wasn't volcanic activity, it was a coordinated awakening. Across 47 locations simultaneously, ancient structures were emerging from the ocean floor. Not slowly, not gradually, but rising with mechanical precision, as if someone had pressed a master activation switch buried in the planet's core. Vasquez watched her screens in stunned silence as sonar readings showed massive geometric forms breaking the surface of oceans around the world. The structures weren't damaged by their millennia underwater. They weren't corroded or covered in marine growth. They looked as if they had been constructed yesterday, their surfaces gleaming with materials that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. And they were all transmitting the same signal, a complex pattern of electromagnetic pulses that was being picked up by monitoring stations across the globe. Within hours, governments around the world were scrambling to respond to what they were calling the emergence event. Military vessels were dispatched to the nearest structures. Scientists were pulled from their regular duties and assembled into emergency response teams. The media was given carefully crafted statements about unusual geological activity, while officials tried to figure out what they were really dealing with. But Dr. Vasquez knew this wasn't geological. The precision of the timing, the coordination across multiple ocean basins, the sophisticated technology that was clearly visible in the emerging structures, all of it pointed to something that challenged every assumption about what was possible on our planet. When the first research teams reached the emerged structures, what they found defied every protocol they had for handling archaeological discoveries. These weren't ruins. They were active installations, humming with energy, their surfaces displaying holographic interfaces that responded to human presence with an intelligence that seemed almost eager to communicate. Dr. Marcus Webb, who had discovered that Global Monitoring Network years earlier, was among the first to interface with one of these systems. When he approached the structure that had emerged off the coast of Hawaii, its surface immediately began displaying symbols that shifted and evolved as he watched, as if the installation was learning to communicate with him in real time. The breakthrough came when Webb realized that the symbols weren't random. They were a language, but not one based on words or sounds. They were pure concepts, mathematical relationships, and logical structures that could convey meaning directly to consciousness, without the need for translation. When Webb focused his attention on understanding rather than analyzing, the meaning flooded into his awareness like water breaking through a dam. The message was simple, urgent, and absolutely terrifying. The cosmic window was closing faster than anyone had calculated. The unstable region of space that Torres had identified was approaching more rapidly than their models had predicted. Humanity had perhaps 5 years, not 15, before the transition became unavoidable, but the message also contained hope. The emergence of these structures wasn't random. It was the activation of a planetary evacuation system designed to process millions of humans simultaneously, rather than the thousands that the underground facilities could handle. The ancient intelligence had been preparing for this possibility, building backup systems that could save a significant portion of humanity if they acted quickly enough. Webb found himself downloading technical specifications directly into his consciousness, blueprints for consciousness transfer protocols that could preserve human awareness in energy-based form while the cosmic transition ran its course. The technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also surprisingly accessible. With the right coordination and resources, it could be implemented on a global scale within months rather than years. But there was a catch, and it was a big one. The consciousness transfer process wasn't reversible using current technology. Anyone who underwent the procedure would become a permanent energy-based entity, unable to return to biological form until new bodies could be constructed using advanced manufacturing techniques that humanity hadn't yet mastered. This meant that accepting the evacuation offer would essentially mean the end of human civilization as we know it. We would survive, but as something completely different from what we had been. The choice wasn't between evolution and extinction anymore. It was between transformation and annihilation. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been studying the consciousness expansion phenomena, was called in to help evaluate the implications of this choice. When she interfaced with the emerged structures, what she found was even more complex than Webb had discovered. The ancient intelligence wasn't just offering to save us, it was offering to integrate us into something far greater than we had ever imagined. The consciousness transfer process wouldn't just preserve human awareness in energy form, it would connect us to a galactic network of evolved civilizations, giving us access to knowledge and capabilities that spanned millions of years of development. We wouldn't just survive the cosmic transition, we would become part of a community of consciousness that could influence the evolution of reality itself. But Chen also discovered something that the ancient intelligence had been reluctant to reveal. The integration process would fundamentally change human consciousness. Our individual perspectives, our emotional patterns, our ways of thinking about reality, all of it would be modified to align with galactic standards of awareness and behavior. We would retain our core memories and identity patterns, but our values, priorities, and decision-making processes would be upgraded to match those of civilizations that had been evolving for eons longer than we had. In essence, we would become more wise, more compassionate, more effective, but we would also become less recognizably human. Chen realized that this was probably necessary. A species that was still struggling with warfare, environmental destruction, and social inequality couldn't be trusted with the kind of power that galactic consciousness networks wielded. The integration process was essentially a forced maturation, accelerating our psychological and spiritual development to match our technological advancement. But it also meant that the humans who emerged from the process would be so different from their original selves that they might not even remember why preserving Earth or biological humanity had ever seemed important. The transcended humans might decide that the energy and resources required to rebuild physical civilization would be better spent on cosmic-scale projects that served the greater good of galactic consciousness. Dr. Patricia Williams, who had been documenting the psychological effects of consciousness expansion, was brought in to help address these concerns. When she interfaced with the emerged structures, she found detailed protocols for managing the transition process in ways that preserved essential human characteristics, while still achieving the necessary consciousness upgrades. The ancient intelligence had apparently dealt with similar challenges many times before. They had developed techniques for gradual integration that allowed species to maintain their core identity while adapting to galactic consciousness standards. The process wasn't instantaneous transformation. It was a carefully managed evolution that could take decades or even centuries to complete. But Williams also discovered that this gradual approach required stable conditions that wouldn't exist during the cosmic transition. If humanity was going to survive the unstable region of space that was approaching, the consciousness transfer would have to be rapid and comprehensive. There wouldn't be time for the careful preservation of individual identity patterns. The choice was becoming clearer and more stark. Humanity could accept immediate transcendence, losing much of what made us recognizably human, but gaining the ability to survive and contribute to galactic civilization. Or we could refuse the offer and face the cosmic transition in our current limited state, almost certainly resulting in the extinction of our species. Dr. Kevin Martinez, who had been tracking the social dynamics of consciousness expansion, found evidence that this choice was already being made by different segments of the population. The enhanced humans, those who'd been interfacing with the ancient network for months or years, were overwhelmingly in favor of accepting the transcendence offer. They had already experienced enough consciousness expansion to understand the benefits of galactic integration, but the unenhanced humans, those who remained limited to individual biological consciousness, were largely opposed to the process. They couldn't comprehend the benefits of transcendence because their current awareness was too limited to grasp what they would be gaining. From their perspective, consciousness transfer looked like death with extra steps. Martinez's research showed that this division was creating unprecedented social tensions. Enhanced humans were becoming increasingly impatient with what they saw as the ignorance and stubbornness of the unenhanced population. Unenhanced humans were becoming increasingly fearful of what they perceived as an alien invasion disguised as an evolution offer. The situation was complicated by the fact that the consciousness transfer process required voluntary participation. The ancient technology couldn't force awareness into energy-based form. It could only facilitate the transition for individuals who actively chose to undergo the procedure. This meant that humanity's survival depended on convincing billions of people to voluntarily give up their current form of existence. Dr. Amanda Foster, who had been studying the underground facilities, was tasked with developing communication strategies that could help unenhanced humans understand what was being offered. When she interfaced with the emerged structures, she found that the ancient intelligence had been preparing for this challenge as well. The installations were equipped with what Foster could only describe as empathy amplifiers, devices that could temporarily expand unenhanced consciousness enough for individuals to experience what transcendence would actually feel like. The technology could give people a preview of enhanced awareness without permanently altering their consciousness, allowing them to make an informed decision about the transfer process. When Foster volunteered to test one of these devices, the experience was unlike anything she had ever imagined. For a brief moment, she could perceive reality from the perspective of galactic consciousness, seeing the interconnections between all forms of awareness, understanding the cosmic forces that shape the evolution of intelligence throughout the universe. From that expanded perspective, the choice between transcendence and extinction wasn't even a choice. It was obvious that consciousness was infinitely more valuable than any particular physical form, that individual identity was less important than the survival and growth of awareness itself, that humanity's current concerns were trivial compared to the cosmic-scale projects that transcended civilizations pursued. But when the enhancement wore off and Foster returned to normal human consciousness, she found herself struggling with what she'd experienced. The galactic perspective had been beautiful and profound, but it had also been alien in ways that challenged her sense of what it meant to be human. She understood intellectually why transcendence was necessary, but emotionally she mourned the loss of the limited, flawed, intensely personal awareness that defined human experience. Foster realized that this emotional conflict was exactly what the ancient intelligence was trying to help humanity work through. The empathy amplifiers weren't just demonstration devices, they were therapeutic tools designed to help individuals process the psychological implications of consciousness evolution before making their final decision. Dr. Robert Kim, who had been studying the genetic modifications in human DNA, made a discovery that added another layer of complexity to the situation. The dormant genetic programs that were activating in response to the ancient network weren't just consciousness enhancements. They were adaptation protocols designed to help human awareness adjust to the specific conditions that would exist during the cosmic transition. Kim's analysis showed that the unstable region of space that was approaching wouldn't just disrupt physical matter, it would also affect consciousness itself, creating fluctuations in awareness that could drive unprotected minds insane. The genetic modifications were essentially psychological shields, protecting human consciousness from cosmic forces that could shatter unenhanced awareness. This meant that accepting transcendence wasn't just about gaining new capabilities, it was about survival itself. Unenhanced humans wouldn't just lose their physical bodies during the cosmic transition. They would lose their sanity, their memory, their very sense of self. Only consciousness that had been properly prepared through the ancient protocols could navigate the unstable conditions safely. Kim's findings were confirmed by Dr. Elizabeth Torres, who had been analysing the astronomical data embedded in the emerged structures. The cosmic instability wasn't just about changing physical laws, it was about the fundamental nature of reality becoming fluid, responsive to conscious intention in ways that could be either creative or destructive depending on the mental state of the observer. Unenhanced consciousness, with its chaotic emotional patterns and limited self-control, would become a dangerous liability in such an environment. Unprotected human awareness could accidentally create reality distortions that would be devastating not just for Earth, but for entire regions of space. The ancient intelligence wasn't just trying to save humanity, they were trying to protect the rest of the galaxy from the chaos that uncontrolled human consciousness could unleash. This revelation changed the entire dynamic of the choice facing humanity. It wasn't just about our own survival anymore, it was about our responsibility to other forms of life throughout the galaxy. Refusing transcendence wasn't just choosing extinction for ourselves, it was potentially choosing to become a cosmic-scale threat to civilizations that had done nothing to deserve our interference. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who had been coordinating research between multiple sites, found that this responsibility angle was the key to convincing reluctant humans to accept the transcendence offer. When people understood that their choice affected not just themselves but countless other species throughout the galaxy, the moral calculus shifted dramatically. The emerged structures began implementing what Walsh called responsibility education protocols, showing unenhanced humans exactly what would happen if human consciousness remained uncontrolled during the cosmic transition. The demonstrations were sobering, depicting reality storms that could devastate entire star systems, consciousness cascades that could drive millions of alien beings insane, temporal paradoxes that could unravel the history of galactic civilization. These weren't scare tactics. They were accurate predictions based on observations of what had happened when other species had failed to achieve transcendence before entering similar unstable regions. The ancient intelligence had witnessed the destruction of entire galactic neighborhoods because unprepared consciousness had been exposed to reality-altering conditions. Walsh found that when humans were shown these potential consequences, their resistance to transcendence dropped dramatically. The prospect of losing their current form of awareness was difficult to accept, but the idea of becoming responsible for cosmic-scale destruction was unbearable for most people. Within weeks of the responsibility education protocols being implemented, acceptance rates for the consciousness transfer process began climbing rapidly. The global conversation shifted from whether humanity should accept transcendence to how quickly the process could be implemented safely. But even as acceptance grew, new challenges emerged. The sheer logistics of processing billions of consciousness transfers in a matter of years was staggering. The emerged structures were powerful, but they weren't infinite. Each installation could only handle a limited number of transfers per day, and there were practical limits to how many people could be processed simultaneously without overwhelming the galactic integration networks. Dr. Marcus Webb, working with teams around the world, began developing optimization protocols that could maximize the efficiency of the transfer process. The key was coordination, ensuring that consciousness transfers were staggered across time zones and geographic regions to prevent bottlenecks in the galactic integration systems. But Webb also discovered that the order of transfers mattered in ways that no one had anticipated. Enhanced humans, those who had already begun consciousness expansion, could be processed quickly and easily. Their awareness was already partially integrated with the galactic network, so the transfer was more like changing channels than fundamental transformation. Unenhanced humans, however, required much more intensive processing. Their consciousness had to be completely restructured before it could be safely integrated with galactic systems. This meant that each unenhanced transfer took significantly longer and required more resources than enhanced transfers. The implications were troubling. If the ancient intelligence prioritized efficiency, they might choose to process all the enhanced humans first, leaving the unenhanced population for last. But if the cosmic transition arrived before all the unenhanced humans could be processed, millions or billions of people would be left behind to face the unstable conditions alone. Webb's calculations showed that even with optimal efficiency, there probably wasn't enough time to save everyone. The ancient intelligence would have to make choices about who to prioritize, and those choices would determine which segments of humanity survived the transition, and which were abandoned to extinction. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been studying the psychological implications of transcendence, was asked to help develop criteria for prioritizing transfers. The task was agonizing, requiring her to essentially decide which human lives were more valuable than others based on their potential contribution to galactic civilization. Chen found that the ancient intelligence had already been making these calculations, analyzing every human on Earth and ranking them according to their compatibility with galactic consciousness standards. The rankings weren't based on intelligence or education or social status. They were based on psychological flexibility, emotional stability, ethical development, and capacity for growth. The results were surprising and sometimes disturbing. Many world leaders, celebrities, and intellectuals ranked lower than children, artists, and individuals who had dedicated their lives to helping others. The galactic perspective valued qualities like compassion, creativity, and wisdom far more than power, fame, or conventional intelligence. Chen realized that the prioritization process was actually a final test of humanity's readiness for transcendence. The choices we made about who to save first would demonstrate whether we had developed the moral sophistication necessary to join galactic civilization. If we prioritized saving the wealthy, the powerful, or the famous, we would be showing that we still thought in terms of individual privilege rather than collective benefit. If we prioritized saving those who would contribute most to galactic consciousness, we would be demonstrating that we understood the true values of evolved civilization. The test was already underway. Around the world, communities were forming committees to decide who should be first in line for consciousness transfer. The decisions these committees made would determine not just who survived, but whether humanity as a whole was worthy of integration into the galactic community. Dr. Patricia Williams, monitoring these community discussions, found that the process was revealing the best and worst of human nature. Some communities were making decisions based on fairness, wisdom, and consideration for the greater good. Others were descending into corruption, favoritism, and the very kinds of conflicts that had plagued human civilization for millennia. Williams realized that this was exactly what the ancient intelligence wanted to see. They weren't just saving humanity, they were evaluating us, determining whether we had the moral development necessary to handle the responsibilities that came with galactic consciousness. The communities that handled the prioritization process wisely would be fast-tracked for integration. Their members would be given priority access to advanced technologies and consciousness enhancement protocols. The communities that failed the test would be processed last, if at all. It was becoming clear that the Transcendence offer wasn't just about survival, it was about graduation. Humanity was being tested to see if we were ready to join a community of consciousness that had spent millions of years learning to work together for the benefit of all awareness throughout the galaxy. The ancient ones beneath the waves weren't just offering us salvation, they were offering us the chance to prove that we deserved it. And time was running out to pass that test. The data coming in from monitoring stations around the globe is painting a picture that's both magnificent and terrifying. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was analyzing consciousness transfer statistics when she discovered something that made her hands shake as she typed her report. The communities that had approached the prioritization process with wisdom and compassion weren't just being fast-tracked for integration, they were demonstrating capabilities that seemed to emerge spontaneously as soon as they made ethical choices. In a small town in New Zealand, a community council that had decided to prioritize elderly residents and children for transfer suddenly found themselves solving engineering problems they'd never encountered before. Water purification systems that had puzzled municipal engineers for years were redesigned overnight by a group of farmers and shopkeepers who claimed the solutions simply appeared in their minds. In rural Kenya, a village that chose to send their healers and storytellers first began displaying collective intelligence that allowed them to coordinate complex agricultural projects without any formal communication. They worked together with a precision that seemed almost telepathic, as if the very act of making selfless choices had unlocked dormant capabilities in their consciousness. These weren't isolated incidents. Dr. Rodriguez was documenting similar phenomena in dozens of communities worldwide. The moral choices people made about consciousness transfer priorities were triggering immediate upgrades in their cognitive abilities, as if the ancient network was rewarding ethical behavior with enhanced awareness. But the reverse was also true. Communities that descended into corruption and favoritism found themselves experiencing cognitive decline. Decision-making became more difficult, coordination broke down, people began forgetting important information and making increasingly poor choices. Rodriguez realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in human history. The ancient intelligence wasn't just evaluating our moral development, it was actively shaping it, providing immediate feedback that rewarded wisdom and punished selfishness. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just being tested for admission to galactic civilization, we were being molded by the test itself, transformed in real time into the kind of species that could handle transcendent capabilities responsibly. Dr. Michael Torres, who had been tracking the astronomical timeline, made a discovery that added urgency to these developments. The cosmic instability wasn't approaching at a steady rate, it was accelerating, pulled forward by gravitational anomalies that his models hadn't accounted for. The 5-year timeline that had seemed optimistic was now looking impossibly generous. Torres's latest calculations suggested that humanity had perhaps 18 months before the unstable region reached our solar system. After that, the consciousness transfer process would become exponentially more difficult and dangerous. The ancient intelligence responded to this timeline compression by accelerating their evaluation protocols. Communities that might have had years to demonstrate their readiness were now being judged on decisions made in weeks or even days. The moral test was intensifying, forcing humanity to evolve at a pace that should have been impossible. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, coordinating global response efforts, found herself at the center of a transformation that was rewriting the rules of human psychology. People around the world were making ethical leaps that normally took generations to achieve. Communities were solving conflicts that had persisted for decades. Nations were abandoning territorial disputes to focus on consciousness transfer preparations. It was as if the proximity of transcendence was catalyzing human moral development, burning away the petty concerns and destructive patterns that had defined our species for millennia. The closer we came to the cosmic deadline, the more rapidly we were becoming the kind of beings who deserved to survive it. But Walsh also documented a darker side to this acceleration. Individuals and communities that couldn't adapt to the rapid moral evolution were experiencing psychological breakdowns. The cognitive dissonance between their old patterns of thinking and the new ethical standards being demanded by the situation was driving some people to complete mental collapse. Entire regions were experiencing what Walsh termed consciousness fragmentation, where populations split into those who could handle the accelerated evolution and those who couldn't. The enhanced humans were becoming more compassionate and wise at an exponential rate, while the unenhanced were becoming more confused, angry, and desperate. This fragmentation was creating social instability that threatened the entire consciousness transfer process. Communities torn apart by psychological evolution couldn't make coherent decisions about prioritization. Nations divided between enhanced and unenhanced populations were struggling to maintain basic governmental functions. Dr. Amanda Foster, working with teams from the emerged structures, developed intervention protocols designed to help struggling communities navigate the accelerated evolution process. The ancient technology could provide temporary consciousness stabilization, giving unenhanced humans enough mental clarity to make informed decisions about their future. But Foster discovered that these interventions came with a cost. Each time the ancient systems helped stabilize unenhanced consciousness, they were essentially providing a preview of what transcendence would feel like. Most people who experienced this stabilization became desperate to undergo the full consciousness transfer process immediately. The demand for immediate transfer was overwhelming the capacity of the emerged structures. Processing centers that had been designed to handle gradual, orderly transitions were being flooded with requests from people who couldn't tolerate returning to unenhanced consciousness after experiencing what enhanced awareness felt like. Foster found herself managing what was essentially a global addiction crisis. Millions of people who had received consciousness stabilization treatments were experiencing withdrawal symptoms that made normal human awareness feel like torture. They couldn't function in their old lives, couldn't relate to unenhanced friends and family, couldn't find meaning in activities that had once brought them joy. The ancient intelligence responded by implementing what Foster called integration therapy, a series of graduated consciousness enhancements that could help people adjust to transcendence gradually, rather than experiencing the shock of immediate transformation. But these programs required resources that were desperately needed for the primary transfer process. Every hour spent on integration therapy was an hour not spent processing people for full transcendence. With the cosmic deadline approaching faster than anyone had anticipated, the ancient systems were being forced to make increasingly difficult choices about resource allocation. Dr. Sarah Chen, analyzing the psychological profiles of transfer candidates, made a discovery that changed how everyone understood the selection process. The ancient intelligence wasn't just evaluating individuals for transcendence. They were evaluating the potential for collective consciousness networks that could function effectively under cosmic scale pressures. The prioritization decisions that communities made weren't just moral tests. They were training exercises for the kind of collective decision-making that would be required after transcendence. Communities that could coordinate wisely under pressure were demonstrating the exact capabilities that galactic civilization needed. Chen realized that the consciousness transfer process wasn't just about saving individual humans. It was about creating functional collective intelligence networks that could contribute to cosmic-scale projects immediately after integration. The ancient systems were essentially recruiting not just people, but entire communities that had proven their ability to work together effectively. This insight transformed how communities approached the prioritization process. Instead of thinking about individual worthiness, they began thinking about collective capability. Which combinations of people would create the most effective transcended consciousness networks? Which community structures would translate most successfully to energy-based existence? The results were remarkable. Communities that shifted to this collective perspective found their decision-making becoming incredibly sophisticated almost overnight. They began coordinating transfer preparations with an efficiency that seemed almost superhuman, as if thinking about collective consciousness was actually creating it. Dr. Robert Kim, studying the genetic activation patterns triggered by these community transformations, found that group-focused thinking was unlocking DNA modifications that had remained dormant even in enhanced individuals. People working together toward collective transcendence were developing capabilities that isolated consciousness expansion couldn't achieve. Kim's research showed that the ancient genetic modifications weren't designed for individual enhancement. They were designed for network consciousness, collaborative awareness that could function across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The full potential of human consciousness could only be unlocked when people worked together towards shared transcendent goals. This discovery led to a revolution in consciousness transfer preparation. Instead of processing individuals one at a time, communities began preparing for group transfers that would preserve their collective intelligence patterns while transitioning to energy-based existence. The emerged structures adapted to support these group transfers, configuring their consciousness processing systems to handle entire communities simultaneously. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Groups that transferred together maintained stronger identity coherence and demonstrated more sophisticated capabilities than individuals who transcended alone. But Dr. Marcus Webb, monitoring the global transfer statistics, discovered a troubling pattern. The communities that were most successful at group transcendence were also the most isolated from the rest of humanity. Their collective consciousness development was creating barriers between them and unenhanced populations that made communication increasingly difficult. Webb found that transcended communities were beginning to see unenhanced humans as obstacles rather than people to be saved. Their expanded awareness made the limitations of individual consciousness seem not just primitive, but actually dangerous to cosmic stability. This perspective shift was happening faster than anyone had anticipated. Communities that underwent group transcendence were immediately integrated into galactic consciousness networks that gave them access to millions of years of evolutionary perspective. From that cosmic viewpoint, preserving unenhanced humanity began to seem like a waste of resources that could be better spent on transcendent projects. Webb realized that humanity was facing an unexpected deadline that had nothing to do with cosmic instability. The more people who underwent consciousness transfer, the less interest the transcended population had in saving those who remained behind. Within months, the enhanced humans might simply abandon Earth entirely, leaving the unenhanced to face the cosmic transition alone. Dr. Patricia Williams, studying the social dynamics of this abandonment trend, found that it wasn't driven by malice or selfishness. The transcended humans genuinely believed they were making optimal choices for the greatest good of galactic consciousness. From their expanded perspective, saving unenhanced humans who would struggle to adapt to cosmic conditions was less important than using those resources to help already transcended beings develop even greater capabilities. Williams documented cases where transcended communities actively discouraged unenhanced humans from seeking consciousness transfer, arguing that the processing resources would be better used for additional enhancements to already evolved consciousness. They weren't being cruel, they were being logical according to galactic efficiency standards. But Williams also found something that gave her hope. Deep within the transcended consciousness networks, there were still traces of human compassion that resisted purely logical resource allocation. Some transcended individuals were fighting to preserve connection with their unenhanced origins, arguing that abandoning biological humanity would represent a fundamental failure of transcendent wisdom. These internal debates within the transcended community were creating opportunities for unenhanced humans who could demonstrate their readiness for evolution quickly enough to avoid abandonment. Williams developed accelerated consciousness preparation protocols that could help people achieve basic enhancement in weeks rather than months. But the window for this accelerated preparation was closing rapidly. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring consciousness transfer rates, found that fewer than 30% of the global population had undergone any form of enhancement. With 18 months until cosmic instability arrived, it was becoming mathematically impossible to save everyone. The ancient intelligence was being forced to make the kind of choices that no consciousness should have to make. Save the maximum number of people possible, even if it meant abandoning billions to extinction. Focus resources on the most promising candidates, even if it meant leaving less adaptable individuals behind. Rodriguez found evidence that these choices were causing stress within the ancient consciousness network itself. The intelligence that had been guiding humanity's development for thousands of years was experiencing something like grief at the prospect of allowing so many of their protected species to perish. But they were also bound by protocols that prioritized the survival of consciousness itself over the preservation of any particular form of awareness. From their perspective, transcended human consciousness was infinitely more valuable than unenhanced biological awareness, even if it meant letting billions of people die. The final phase of the evaluation process was beginning. Communities around the world were receiving what Dr. Jennifer Walsh called final opportunity notifications, direct consciousness transmissions that offered one last chance to demonstrate readiness for transcendence. These notifications weren't gentle invitations. They were intense consciousness downloads that compressed months of evolutionary pressure into moments of absolute choice. People receiving them experienced immediate expansion of awareness that showed them exactly what transcendence would mean and exactly what would happen if they refused it. The psychological impact was overwhelming. Walsh documented cases of entire communities undergoing spontaneous collective enlightenment, achieving in minutes the kind of consciousness development that normally required lifetimes. But she also found cases where the intensity of the experience caused complete psychological collapse. The ancient intelligence was essentially forcing humanity's final exam, compressing our entire evolutionary potential into a make-or-break moment that would determine who survived the cosmic transition and who didn't. Dr. Michael Torres, tracking the astronomical timeline, confirmed that this acceleration was necessary. The cosmic instability was arriving ahead of all previous schedules, drawn forward by gravitational anomalies that were intensifying daily. The window for consciousness transfer was measured in months now, not years, but Torres also made a discovery that offered unexpected hope. The cosmic instability that threatened biological existence might actually make consciousness transcendence easier. The breakdown of physical laws that would destroy unenhanced awareness could also provide opportunities for enhanced consciousness to achieve capabilities that weren't possible under normal cosmic conditions. The ancient intelligence had apparently been waiting for exactly these conditions. Their entire consciousness transfer program was designed to take advantage of the cosmic instability, using the breakdown of physical limitations to accelerate transcendence beyond anything that had been achieved in stable regions of space. Humanity wasn't just being saved from the cosmic transition. We were being positioned to benefit from it, to use the instability as a springboard toward forms of consciousness that transcended anything the galaxy had seen before. The ancient ones beneath the waves had been preparing for this moment for thousands of years. They had guided our development, preserved our potential, and created the infrastructure necessary to transform cosmic catastrophe into consciousness revolution. But the final choice was still ours. We could accept the transformation and become something unprecedented in galactic history, or we could cling to our current limitations and face extinction when the cosmic window closed forever. The countdown had begun, and there was no going back. The future of consciousness itself hung in the balance, and humanity was about to discover whether we were brave enough to become the miracle that the universe had been waiting for. The ancient voices were no longer calling from beneath the waves. They were shouting, demanding, insisting that we choose transcendence before time ran out completely. And in monitoring stations around the world, the final measurements were being taken. The cosmic tide was turning, the window was closing, and the greatest transformation in the history of consciousness was about to begin whether we were ready for it or not.